Hey y'all, Flipper Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today as we're going to take a look at this Miguron Moyarl. This has been reviewed by a number of people on the YouTubes and all of them singing very high praises of it. I've had this knife for a while now. Actually already did another video on this, not reviewing the knife, but replacing the bearings with skiff, although that wasn't really necessary. So we're going to take a look at the good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to find out if this could potentially be that one and done kind of knife, as long as you're not a little bit of a nutcase collector like your boy Fred here is. Before we get started, if you would, as always, please down below here, hit that subscribe and notification bell. Your boy needs a little YouTube love, y'all. And by the way, while I'm thinking about it, thank y'all so much for all of you who have subscribed and hit the thumbs up button. Man, I really, I need that. If y'all know my story here over the last month or two on the YouTubes, your boy needs a little love. So thanks so much for helping me out with that. I always like, before we get started, take a look at the box that it came in. Nothing particularly fancy. You may have seen these blue Miguron knives before. This is obviously made in China, so I don't really have any problem with that. If you've seen all my other videos, you know that's not a huge deal. All that comes in the package, however, is just the plastic wrap, a little business card, and a plain little foam liner in the box. So you don't get any of those fancy zip-up cases that you get with other brands like 𝗕𝗂𝗴𝗂𝗏 or 𝗕𝗑𝗏𝗏. But you know what they did? Instead of that, they took and spent that money on that package on a nice little titanium pocket clip, which is something you very rarely get in the under $50 category, which is what this is. So I am A-okay with them making that trade-off. Give me a plain box any day and upgrade my knife for me. That's a definite preferred course of action. So got to give them a little bit of credit for that. I appreciate them spending my money wisely. Let's take a look at a few size comps. It's always hard to get your head around the size of this knife. We'll start with our Benchmade friends here. Crooked River on top. Clearly, we're much smaller than the Crooked River and a little bit larger than the Bug Out, although not terribly longer. But it's probably got, it's hard to see, I know, on the video with the angles and all that. It's probably a quarter to a half inch longer than the old Benchmade Bug Out. If you're a Spyderco person, we always like to give you guys a little love. So there's the PM2 and the Para 3. You can see clearly it is smaller than the PM2 and longer than the Para 3. So a lot of people refer to this Miguron as the kind of Goldilocks size of a knife. Let's take a look at some maybe more modern comparisons. So we've got the Civivi Vision FG, comes in at just a little bit longer. The CJRB Pyrite, man, I think these things are just about almost the exact same size. Again, I know that's tough because of the angle, but if I put these two side by side like that, let me see if I can butt them up against the front of this mat. You can see these things are just about the exact same size. Obviously different blade shape and size. We're going to take a look at that. So again, right there in that kind of Goldilocks look, the feel, the size, all the specs. Let's bring up the specs down the left-hand side of the screen. We're going to take a little bit of a look there. You can pause it. I'm not going to go in and read all of these necessarily, but you can see this is just a little over 7.5 inch knife, 3¼ inch total blade length, a little bit less than that, right around 3 inches, 3¼ maybe, on the cutting length. Sorry, it won't be 3¼ on the cutting length, more like 3 inches. Closed, just under 4.5. The blade thickness is what I'm going to also call kind of that Goldilocks thickness on here, 0.126. Not too thin, not too thick. Definitely thick enough to give you confidence in kind of using this as a good, relatively hard use, everyday carry. Handle thickness, just a shade thick for me, but just a hair over ½ inch. It feels really good in the hand. It fills the hand out well. I will tell you, when you're, if you're doing any kind of heavy push cutting type stuff, because of that wider handle, definitely has some good ergonomics for that. The blade coating on this is a black PVD. It's a little bit interesting on this. Normally, I'm a big fan of black PVD coatings. This one feels a little chalky. It almost has a little bit of a stickiness to it. Hard to explain how something chalky, I'm going to say it's going to be sticky, but like when you're pushing this thing through some hard cardboard, it's kind of dry, and so I can see how it might drag just a little bit. However, it is a nice full flat grind. It is pretty darn slicey. We got G10 scales here over steel liners. We'll take a closer look at those in just a second. The blade steel is a 14C28N. You can see that right there on the blade. It's really a great intro level, daily user kind of steel. Great quality steel. The HRC on this, I'm a little disappointed in that, 57 to 59. So the actual ideal range for 14C28N is between 55 and 62. So they've kind of nailed the middle of that. So you can't really fault them. They didn't do that. But, most people would say, gosh, I'd really love to see this a little closer to 60, 61. I understand, you may not want to try risking pushing it to 62. But love to see it a little bit more. But what that does give this knife is a lot of toughness. The weight is just over 4 ounces. That makes this a great full-size, I don't want to even call it, it's a full-size knife. I'd call it a full-size knife, but solid feeling in the hand, but definitely not too heavy to be an everyday carry. This is running on a liner lock. You can get these online pretty much all day long for just under $50. I'll have some links down below. Also, they just came out with a new version of the Miguron, which is a Moyarl in a black micarta scale with the crossbar lock. So that's kind of interesting. However, there are some differences in that one. For some reason, the micarta version is right hand only. It doesn't include the left hand clip carry. And I don't know why they wouldn't have done that. They did it obviously on this one is righty and lefty capable. But anyhow, just so you're aware, that one's a little bit more expensive. It's just under $60. I always like to measure behind the blade edge to see. I have not sharpened this. It's a factory original edge. I got it down to about 18 thousandths, which puts it in pretty much a normal range, not like the incredibly most slicey blade you've ever had, but definitely there's a whole lot of blades out there that are a lot thicker than this as well. This is really, like I say, kind of that Goldilocks size, shape, and almost all the way around in the specs. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at some of the features on this thing. As I mentioned at the beginning, this does come with a titanium pocket clip, which is definitely a very nice upgrade. You rarely get that on a sub $50 knife these days. So that's where they spent your money. It is not a full deep carry, as you will see here. You will have a little bit sticking up out of your pocket. However, it is, as I mentioned, ambidextrous, so you can flip it over. A little bit of lefty love on that for you guys. And really nicely designed clip. Definitely no hot spots in the hand. The one thing I would mention, you can start to see this has had really light use. So, I did stick it in my pocket for a week or so and carried it around and used it and set it down. When you set it down on that clip, I mean, there was no hard use. I wasn't rubbing or scraping into things, but you can see that PVD coating is starting to wear off already from that. So a little disappointed in that. But again, this is a sub $50 daily user knife. I don't intend to or expect to keep this thing spotless. I don't mind showing a little bit of snail trails and wear and tear. Just wanted to point that out because, it is potentially an issue that you just want to be aware of. Hardware, everything on this thing is T8 all the way around. The body screws, the pivot screws, even the pocket clip screws are all T8. So yeehaw for that. They did a good job there. You do have a nice titanium blue anodized pivot collar. This is a captive pivot. They've done a great job with that. I like that collar. It's the only blue on the knife, so it's like, wow, why didn't you make something else blue? I guess they could have, but it's also not really, I mean, when you see this like at that angle, that's what people normally see. You barely see the color. It's just a slight pop of color. It is on the clip side. I think it's really nice. I actually like that. I know some people like it, some people don't, but there you go. This is, as I mentioned, G10. It is nice textured G10. You can see just light texture, normal kind of G10-y kind of texture, but definitely not slick in your hands like some other knives that I have reviewed recently, including my favorite EDC knife. If y'all haven't seen that, make sure you go watch that video. It is over steel liners. They were nice enough to powder coat or treat, somehow black out those steel liners. These are heavily milled out steel liners. I'll bring up an exploded view that y'all can see that a little bit better. You can see kind of down in there as well, but I'll show you in the photo. They did heavy milling on the liners to keep that weight down. Yeehaw for that. There is no lanyard pin or hole anywhere, so if you are a lanyard person, you're going to be a little disappointed in that. This is running on a liner lock, as I mentioned. Let's take a closer peek at that. You can see I'm going to say that's about 50%. That's at least a good 50% lockup on that one. I've done a lot of blade whacking. This is a very solid lockup. You are not going to break that free at all. It did come with ceramic bearings. However, you'll notice already I put up a video where I replaced these ceramic bearings with some skiff bearings, just because that gave me a total of 10 extra balls. But honestly, y'all, it doesn't need it. I mean, these are pretty good, like Teflon washers with ceramic bearings. So unless you're just a weirdo like me and really like to upgrade things, you'll be perfectly happy with the bearings that come with it. Because I have put the skiffs, that has made it pretty drop shut friendly. It's not completely drop shut friendly, but you know, you got to give it a little flick, a little bit of just light pressure, and this thing will drop into place. One of the things I want to notice is just a shortcoming of this is that at this point, this blade is still not on the detent ball. So it's easy to double clutch. If you're one of those people who just likes to drop it that far and then try to flip it from there, you're going to end up double clutching it. So you have to let it come down past that detent ball, and then it drops home nice and easy. That pear-shaped hole makes it nice for both forward and reverse flip. That's your only deployment methods, is either a thumb flip or a spidey flick. And you can see that's quite easy. Nice, solid thwack. The detent ball on this thing is really good. I'm going to call this just perfect for, you know, either the front or the reverse flip. Easy to do. Love it all day long. Feels solid. Has a nice, solid feel to it. You know, that thwack it makes when it opens up and locks into place. Really nice. Feels good all the way around. No lock stick of any sort. No blade play, left, right, up, down, you know, no pivot lash, no detent lash. It's all what you would expect from Miguron, you know, well-built, high quality, yet very affordable kind of knife there. Let's talk about the steel real quick for a second. So this is Sandvik 14C28, and this is a fantastic budget steel, definitely designed for entry-level knives and potentially entry-level users. I'm going to bring up a chart here. So one of the things I want to try to do going forward on my videos is do a little bit of education on the different types of steels that we're running into out here and how they compare to the others out there in the market. So you will see on the left-hand side that really on the far left and far right, the 14C28N is really top-notch in toughness and corrosion resistance. So this is a kind of steel that's made for people who may not want to do a whole lot of like hard, serious knife sharpening. We'll talk about the edge retention in a second, but it's made to be tough. So for those of you who use your sub $50 knives as pry bars, as screwdrivers, you know, for all those intended uses that you should never be using a knife for, it's kind of made a little bit idiot-proof in that regard. It's hard to say what other knives or what other steels in terms of toughness this is the same as, because it's really at the top of the chart there. It is better than Maximet, Elmax, Van X, S35 and 45, CPM 154, CPM M4, better than Magna Cut, Nitro V, Crewwear. It's tougher than all those steels. By the way, giving credit where credit is due, this is the data from Knife Steel Nerds and Laren Thomas. So this is not your boy Fred making this stuff up. Let's go to edge retention, though, because you can see we only rate a 3 out of 10 on edge retention. So it's not the best. However, what that makes is for a knife that's very easy to touch up and resharpen. You don't even, like I said, need real heavy-duty sharpening equipment, just a good knife strop. And in most cases, after a hard day's use, you can strop this thing a few times back and forth on your strop, and it will be back to nice razor sharp again. It's roughly the same edge retention, you know, as AEBL, AUS-8, 8CR13, LC200N, which is one of Spyderco's, you know, very corrosion resistant steels, and even Nitro V. So it fits in there nice. It's only better than really like a 1095 or A2, those high carbon type steels. The corrosion resistance, though, is back where we're jumping up back on the top of the chart. So better corrosion resistance than a lot of those really high-end, what they call super steels, which is pretty shocking. given that this is, again, a sub $50 knife. So you can see, again, overall, the steel is designed to be very easy to resharpen. At the end of the day, you can basically strop it back to sharp almost for everything you'd need to do with this thing, but it's made to be super tough, super corrosion resistant. Again, not thrilled about the fact that this thing is, just on the low end of what I call the hardness scale. I really would have loved to seen that go up a notch or two, but hard to complain when you're getting so many other good things in a knife like this. This is obviously a nice drop point blade. The point does kind of drop down nicely, so it's not terrible. If you have to do draw cuts, tend to do that a lot with your EDC knife. Has a nice big round belly, makes for easy cutting. Kind of thin ropes or cable ties or whatever you have like that. I mentioned the PVD coating already. It's a little bit chalky, but it does look good. I mean, it's a nice flat color. I like it. Doesn't show too many snail trails. I mean, I've cleaned this up because I've cut a good bit of cardboard with it, and it gets all the glue and gunk stuck to it, just like anything else does. Maybe even more so because of kind of the dryness of this PVD coating. But it cleans up great. No worries. There's almost no branding anywhere on this knife, which is another really nice thing. The only thing you can see on here is that 14C28N. The only branding comes on that pivot collar for Miguron, and even that's not really obtrusive in any way. It's kind of a cool little design. So, yeehaw for that. They did a good job in regards to that. The action, as you have seen, is pretty darn smooth indeed. But again, I'm running on I'm running on skiff bearings now. There's no blade play at lockup. We already talked about all that. It did come perfectly centered. However, your boy, when he put those skiffs on, did something to get it pushed over to the side. I may just need to kind of play with it a little bit. This is a captive pivot, so it's not like you can do the both side turning thing. So I'll just have to maybe play with it. But honestly, y'all, I mean, for as good as this knife is, for what it is, I probably am not going to mess with that a whole lot. It's probably going to stay right where it is. Let's show you a little bit of cutting. Again, this is a nice steel. I haven't sharpened this blade since I got it. I did strop it, but you can see that's pretty smooth. I mean, it's cutting nice and smooth on paper, obviously. Yeehaw for that. I know that's why we all buy a knife, isn't it? So we can cut open our paper. Do a little bit of cardboard. This is pretty lightweight cardboard, and you can see even with the tape, this thing will make pretty quick work of that cardboard. So great for that. Plenty sharp out of the box. You won't need to touch it up maybe once or twice on a strop if you're doing a lot of box breakdowns. Overall, great ergos, feels good. There's no jimping anywhere on this knife, but the forward finger choil is something that I always love, and I always tend to gravitate towards knives that give you that extra choke up forward position. I have a size large glove, and even choke back, you can see there is plenty of room. This is a relatively neutral shaped handle, forward or reverse cutting. Easily just as good pinch grip, drag cuts, you name it. In just about every position this thing feels locked in. I definitely do like to choke up because this large finger choil can get caught up in that cardboard. If you're not careful, it's not hard to get that thing down here. Now you got to start all over again. But you get up in here, that thing locks into your hand quite solidly. Don't even really miss the jimping. Great, easy way to run with that. Because of that large finger choil, obviously that gives you a huge sharpening choil as well. That's going to be great for those of you who do like to sharpen it. Again, because this is a slightly softer steel, you probably may actually need to really sharpen it once or twice. I thought about, even putting a more steep angle on it, but honestly, guys, you really don't need it. I mean, as I said, it's 18 thousandths behind the edge, plenty slicey. This is an EDC knife, right? This is not the sharpest, sliceiest knife you'll ever have. This is one that you can carry and use for just about everything, from spreading peanut butter to cutting fruit, because again, the corrosion resistance is just off the charts, as well as the toughness. It's that Goldilocks size. You can choke up on it. I mean, I love the whole thing all the way around. Smooth, nice, easy action. The steel is good enough, plenty good for what we're talking about. The lines are good, very classic knife design and shape. Feels good in the hand. It's got that, just enough solidness to it that, you feel confident pulling this knife out and using it. Again, the only negatives I would have about this, blade steel being a little bit soft. The pocket clip kind of shows a little snail trails, a little easier than I had hoped it might, but I can certainly live with that again for a daily user. No worries. That late detent is annoying when you don't get it and you end up double clutching the knife. But again, if you have this knife, you just let it drop down to the next halfway position, because you don't have to worry about that blade cutting into your thumbnail here. So just drop it down there, and easy home it goes. So I'll have links again down below if y'all want to check this thing out on online, see what it's all about. I do strongly recommend this. This is, in terms of like a Goldilocks, one knife to rule them all. I mean, there's no such thing for me, but for a lot of people, they just may be wondering, hey, is this thing good enough to be my everyday carry? And I can do 99% of the things I need to do in my daily grind with one knife. Would this fit the bill? And yeah, I think honestly it does. There's just so many wonderful traits and characteristics and specs on this knife. This is a perfect EDC top 10 all day long. So yeah, sure, I do recommend it. Absolutely. If you would please, again, down below here, hit that subscribe and notification bell. Give your boy a little thumbs up. I need some YouTube love. Otherwise, I appreciate y'all today, and I will see you on the next video. Y'all take care.